Right then, I want to talk to you today about Bruno Fernandes, and I've got some ideas and I've got some data and evidence that I want to present to you about what I'm thinking. Now, United, I believe, face a real conundrum with Bruno Fernandes. He's our captain, one of the most talented players in the squad, undoubtedly world class when he performs, but the performances have been not clicking of late. And the issue, I don't believe, is about quality with Bruno. I think it's about the role within the system under Erik ten Hag. Now, Fernandes is expected and delivers on being Manchester United's chief creator, often deployed in that traditional number 10 role within a 4-2-3-1 shape. But the positioning within that, I believe, causes problems both for Bruno and potentially for the entire team. As we shift towards a style of play that prioritises control, wants to breed consistency and game management, I think Bruno's role is no longer the most effective way to achieve these goals. Football evolves. Bruno, when he came on the scene, was a little bit of a surprise to the Premier League. He's no longer that surprise to the Premier League. We saw so many players, from Paul Scholes to Ryan Giggs to Roy Keane, adapt and change their role over the years, and I'm thinking that's what Bruno has to do to continue being effective for the club as well. Now, I think to understand this issue better and Bruno's role within the team, I think if you look at Odegaard at Arsenal, he's a player that's often compared with Bruno, often cited as playing in the same position as Bruno. But when you start to examine the differences, the tactical nuances, there's some real key differences that I want to point out to you. If you are looking for a great sports betting experience, then sign up with Hollywoodbets and enjoy this incredible welcome offer. Get to £10 in free bets with your first free qualifying bet losses. And here's how it works. If you sign up using my link in the description, deposit using your card and place your first 3 bets on the sportsbook, each bet must be at least £10 with minimum odds of 1.5. These bets can be on any sportbook market and will qualify you for the offer. For each of your first 3 bets that you lose, you'll receive a £10 free bet up to £30 in free bets. And your free bets are valid for multiples as well as at least 3 events where each leg has minimum odds of 1.4. The total odds for the bet must be at least 3.0. Listen, there's more. If you place at least 2 qualifying bets, you'll also get 20 free spins on a slot game, John Hunter and a Book of Tut respin. To claim the offer, just make sure that you place your qualifying bets within 3 days of signing up to Hollywoodbets. For full terms and conditions, check the link in the description. Remember, you must be 18 or older to register, and always gamble responsibly. If you need support, visit gambleaware.org. Now, number 1, control versus creativity. Bruno thrives on that sort of explosive, high risk, high reward creativity, whereas Odegaard tends to excel in tempo control and maintaining rhythm with short passes and a little bit of dictating the play. Odegaard often drops deeper to assist in the build-up, stays connected with the midfield and helps Arsenal maintain possession and sometimes suffocate opposition in central areas. Bruno, on the other hand, remains a lot higher up the pitch, sometimes even beyond the striker that we've got, which can sometimes isolate the 2 holding midfielders and make it look like United are playing 2 against 3 or sometimes 2 against 4, leaving us outnumbered, especially in the transition. And 2, positional discipline. Odegaard's ability to balance both defensive and offensive duties is key to how Arsenal have been so effective in the last couple of years. He presses intelligently, he still has high pressing and ball recovery numbers, but he also knows when to drop back or push forward depending on the situation within the game. Bruno's tendency to roam is to roam into more advanced positions and into the half spaces rather than to roam deeper. That results in a little bit less shape when we transition between defence and attack, but also between attack and defence. And that leads to Manchester United's midfield being bypassed a little bit too easy, and something that I think Odegaard's role within a structured Arsenal team doesn't. Why Bruno's role isn't working. Now, Bruno's positional discipline, I think, is one of the reasons that United struggle for control. He frequently vacates those central areas in pursuit of finding a or creating a goal-scoring opportunity, because that's what I think he lives on. In the same way that Ronaldo is just goals, 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 I think Bruno is just assist, assist, assist. And that leaves our double pivot overexposed. In matches against the top opposition, I think that leads to the midfield getting outrun, as we saw against Liverpool, and it reduces our ability to control games. United are almost playing like an old-school 4-4-2 at the moment. And the game's evolved, the angles are different, and there's overloads in the middle of the pack just by sheer numbers. And to get that back, we have to bring him back into midfield. Now, Bruno's preference for those high-risk passes in congested areas, which is what happens when United play that 3-1-6. He's part of the 6. He's part of that advanced party ahead of the ball. Now, opposition don't just let you have 6 players along their back line. Liverpool, for example, pulled back their entire back 4, and they had their entire midfield sort of getting a +1 against our forward 6. Limiting those passing options and allowing our back line to have the ball because we know we're not going to go long with it, or if they do, they fancy their chances to deal with it. You can't get the ball into Bruno, and if the ball comes into Bruno, it's too congested for him to get on the turn and be able to do something with it. So you've got to look at how you occupy those spaces and how you can start to drag people out into different areas. Bruno's decision-making at times in those congested areas leads to turnovers, which lead to vulnerable counter-attacks for United. And that's because he's receiving the ball in areas that are 10% harder to get on the turn, 10% harder to make something happen from. And it limits United's ability to dominate possession, which is something that I think Erik ten Hag wants as the team's playing style evolves. Now, rather than simply criticising Bruno, I think the key is to find a tactical solution that gets the most out of his talents and allows United to control those games more effectively. And I think we can find a way to happen. The most elegant solution is just a slight rejigging of midfield. And when you look at the personnel that we've got at our disposal, I think it's possible. Now, one of United's most effective midfields in recent times, I think, was that mad run that we went on with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, where we played Matic, Herrera, and Paul Pogba. And they didn't play as a pair of 6s and a 10. They played as a 6, a 8, and a 10. Almost a bit of a dog leg. And they complemented each other and they worked as a 3. Pogba was the most advanced. He was given the most creative freedom. Herrera's job was the one of shuttling and being a little bit of legs. And Matic simply screened. Now, we don't necessarily have the personnel for that. I would presume United's starting 3 in midfield is probably going to be Ugarte, Mainu, and Bruno. But that doesn't mean it couldn't be Ugarte, Casemiro, and Bruno, or even Ugarte, Mainu, and Mount. It could be a combination of a few. There's not unlimited options, but there's options. Now, I think if you bring Bruno back to play as an 8, or the one that's 8/10, the Pogba role in a midfield 3, if you like, instead of playing him as that traditional number 10, United could adopt a system where he is the more advanced 8, alongside a midfielder that's a little bit more box-to-box. Now, I don't think that necessarily suits Kobbie Mainoo down to a T. I think it would more likely suit Casemiro a little bit. But it would start to resemble that midfield setup that Arsenal have got, where Odegaard plays that right-hand side number 8, contributes both offensively and defensively, and with Bruno playing that deeper role, he would have more space to pick out passes, which allows him to influence the game from deeper positions, where he's not easily marked, where he's not always got his back to goal, where he can actually use the vision and creativity, and it would probably shine from those areas. And it would be complemented by a more controlled role that contributes to the team's balance. Using Ugarte as the single pivot. Now, in that setup, Ugarte or potentially Casemiro would act as the sole number 6, screening the back line and breaking up play. That suits Ugarte down to the ground, and that's why he's going to be in the team. That allows United to deploy a bit more of a fluid midfield and even a bit more of an aggressive attacking midfield, giving more aggressive and more attacking role to the likes of Kobbie Mainoo, because he knows that they can take turns and alternate in the one that's going to push up that little bit higher and occupy space. And being unpredictable, not knowing which player's going to arrive into the half space or in between the lines between attack and midfield, or defence and midfield of the opposition, is a massive positive for United. You could even have Eriksen arriving in those sorts of areas depending on the sort of game that you're going to have. Bruno's got a lot of physical qualities and an inherent sort of engine in him that would make him a fantastic kind of box-to-box midfielder given some creative... this isn't a cookie-cutter situation. Matic, Herrera and Pogba don't play for Manchester United, and we don't have players that have got the same kind of attributes as those three players. But between the three of them, they can fulfill the same kind of roles. The 6 and a pair of 8s, with one of them maybe being a little bit more advanced, is already a very successful system for not just Arsenal, but Manchester City as well. Now, yes, Ugarte is not going to be Rodri, but when you look at the sort of positions that Kevin De Bruyne occupies at times and how he gets involved in the build-up play, similar to Odegaard, and you ask yourself, could Bruno Fernandes do that? Yes, he could. And then you've got the rotational element to it as well. Now, just the way Manchester City are doing it in a slightly different way, the way they use John Stones, but the way Arsenal brings Zinchenko into midfield to support the midfield, to support Odegaard when he pushes forward, United can do that as well. Luke Shaw we saw last season, invert into those areas real nice, and if it's not going to be Luke Shaw, we've already seen Mazraoui come in and occupy that. And Arsenal's setup is kind of like a 3-2-2-3 or a 3-2-3-2 at times, depending on the sort of shape that they're deploying in the final third. But that 3-2-2-3, or even 3-2-5, if you want to get more technical, it's a lot more secure than the 3-1-6 that United are playing. And the tweak is just the difference in where the fullback is. Against Liverpool, we saw Manchester United bomb both fullbacks on forward. Kobe would sort of occupy that central area, and Casemiro would drop back with the two defenders, giving you the 3, giving you the 1, and then everybody else was getting ahead of the ball. And that's why we got crucified on the transition. Now, if we adopted more of a City or Arsenal kind of approach to it and went with the 3-2-5, and one of the fullbacks, instead of bombing on, instead of offering width, came into midfield and secured it up a little bit, you'd got more options when passing out. You're not making riskier passes when passing out. And then you can move the ball into the final third with a little bit more security. And you can rotate in those areas. Like, I see Ten Hag building a team that's going to be comfortable rotating. And I just think there's a couple of tweaks to get the best out of the team, but also the best out of Bruno as well. Having that sort of 3-2 behind him allows Bruno to push forward without leaving the midfield exposed. And it means that United are going to have always numbers in central areas. And then finally is the pressing. So Bruno's one of the most energetic pressers. Him and Mount have been fantastic this season in terms of initiating press, but it can lack coordination with the rest of the team. By giving Bruno a bit more of a defined role within that pressing structure, very similar to how Odegaard does it at Arsenal, you don't really see Odegaard tear Arsenal around the place. But when you look at the data afterwards, he pressed a lot. I think United could improve their defensive shape without sacrificing Bruno's natural aggressiveness. To wrap it up, I think Bruno's contributions to United are and remain critical. But to regain control in midfield and improve our consistency, I think his role has to adapt. Now, that advanced positioning as a 10, like we said, it isolates the midfield and it can leave us vulnerable, particularly as we saw with Casemiro's recent dip in form. But also we've seen it previously. Bruno can excel when he's deployed deeper. April last year we played Everton. And he played deeper, and he absolutely ran the show. Probably one of Bruno's best games in a United shirt. He had 96 touches, 36 passes into the final third, 6 key passes. It just worked for him being deeper. And against Everton in that particular game, he's not done it very often where he's been deployed in that role, but he dominated from that role. He created more space to dictate play without getting closely marked. He had a little bit of an extra second on the ball. That allowed him to get his head up, to exploit that sort of long-range passing ability that he's got, the range that he's got. And that change in position made United more controlling in the game, and we had a more consistent attacking threat with him being deeper and getting on the turn. Now, enter Manuel Ugarte. The recent signing of Ugarte from PSG, I think, is a perfect opportunity to shift Bruno to being a more dynamic 8. Ugarte would be fine as a single pivot, offering the defensive stability that you would need if you're going to maybe slightly alter how this United midfield's going to work. And technically, you're going to be more aggressive and push Kobbie Mainoo a little bit higher up the pitch. But the ball win abilities of Ugarte will free up Bruno from having to do the sort of defensive responsibilities that he might previously have had to do as a number 8. It might also be a way that you get Mount and Bruno into a team because you don't need more players to do the defensive screen. Ugarte having just more legs than Casemiro might be how you do this. So this is the tactical adjustments I think you make. You bring Bruno into the 8. You get him on the ball. You use his vision and his range of passing to be more effective. His defensive contributions, again, evidenced by 9 ball recoveries, 3 ground duels won in the centre of the pitch against Nottingham Forest recently, shows how much he can do off the ball. That natural desire and work rate would be so much more of an asset 10, 15 yards deeper for the club. Ugarte in there as a single pivot, giving United that screen, someone to sit and protect the back line. You don't have to worry he's going to vacate it the way Casemiro has done. He's just going to sit there. He's got aggression in him, ball-winning capabilities that would really complement not just Bruno's more advanced creative tendencies, but also move Kobbie Mainoo up the pitch a little bit as well. And that would give us a lot more balance in midfield. It would give a bit more structure to it, and it would also allow it to be a bit more fluid. We've seen when Bruno comes back, Bruno could come back and play alongside, in possession, alongside Ugarte. And then you could see Kobbie Mainoo start dancing past people on the edge of the box. And then you could flip it. And Bruno could push forward while Kobbie sits back and maybe dictates play. Arsenal, and particularly this season, actually, the way they're deploying Rice and Partey with Odegaard, it's a 4-3-3. Bruno could easily support the build-up alongside a Mount or a Mainoo with Ugarte shielding. Or even Casemiro, actually, with Ugarte shielding. That structure prevents the midfield from getting overrun in the way that we saw against Liverpool. And it gives Bruno the sort of space to influence the game in a way that I think we all know that he can do. To completely evolve how Manchester United play and maybe to create more chances, because we look at this team and we go, I don't know how we're going to score goals. It requires a shift in Bruno Fernandes' role to ensure that that midfield is balanced and consistent. A deeper number 8 role alongside Ugarte as the single pivot could provide the control and the creativity that United desperately need, whilst allowing Bruno to continue the influence on games he's had since joining the club. And I think it maximises and plays to his strength. It's a slight tactical adjustment, but I think it's one that's going to be essential for United to get that stability and control and consistency in performances as we move forward. Please let me know your thoughts on that as an option. And let me know what other tactical problem you would like me to look at next. And we'll get it done. Cheers for tuning in as always. If you're new, make sure to subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Laters. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, 5-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.